Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Whatever your time zone, welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and I'm your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we'll be discussing how your digital transformation strategy can deliver competitive advantage. And look, this makes sense. Why digitally transform if it doesn't matter in terms of competitive advantage and organizational performance? Digital transformation can deliver competitive advantage through several key areas to consider, starting today with enhanced customer experience. Look, leveraging data analytics and AI to tailor products and services to individual customer preferences can result in higher customer satisfaction and customer loyalty, really moving the needle with digital transformation. Another big area to consider, of course, is operational efficiency. Doing things like with process automation to implement process automation, RPA, and AI to streamline repetitive tasks, reduce errors, and lower operational costs. Another big area to consider is data-driven decision making, really using data as an asset and a way to use advanced analytics to make more informed decisions, optimize processes, and predict trends. All of this results in real competitive intelligence and advantage. And it all adds up to better innovation and agility, more rapid prototyping and development, scalability, market reach, expansion. Indeed, digital transformation can even lead to new business models and new markets that we had not considered before or were not possible only a few years ago. All of this takes the right collaboration tools, the right employee engagement, meaningful skills development, and measuring your success requires the right benchmarking and performance metrics from which to evaluate your strategies and tactics and continually improve. Look, it's a lot to consider, and we focus on all these areas in the show. But if you consider digital transformation as a way to significantly improve your company's performance and competitive advantage, that is where I believe we can move the needle in terms of digital transformation and its effect to the organizational performance, the performance of our organization. But how do you do it? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today with a great panel of guests. But as always, before I introduce our guests, I do want to say that we want to hear from you too. We want to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So please join in with your comments and your questions in the chat section. And indeed, if you have a question along the way, just jump on in. I will attempt to get some of your questions and comments into the flow of the conversation today, and we'll certainly have a few minutes at the end for your questions. All right, let's jump into it today, shall we? Let's bring aboard our great panel of guests today, starting with Peggy Salz. Peggy, are you with us?
I am indeed, Kevin. I'm very
Peggy.
excited.
Hello, Peggy. Peggy is a content strategist and founder at Mobile Groove. Peggy, it is great to have you back with us on the show today. Where are you calling in from?
I am based in Cologne. So if you're following soccer, football, this is where the action is. So yes, based in Cologne and working from here with a global view, focused on European transformation, which is a bit slower than the US, surprise. So
Okay.
interesting lessons in both directions. And yes, happy to be here with the others in your panel as well.
Well, great, Peggy. It's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Also today is Diana Petrova, head of digital at the August collection. Diana, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, Kevin. Nice to see you again.
Hello, Deanna. Welcome aboard. Thank you so much for being with us again today. Where are you calling in from, Deanna?
London.
London, very good. All right, well, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for being with us. And finally, last but not least, Jamie Graber, president and co-founder of the consultancy group. Jamie's been with us before as well. Jamie, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Kevin. Happy
Where
to
are
be
you
here
calling
today.
in today from, Jamie?
The San Francisco Bay Area.
San Francisco Bay Area. All right. And I am here in Portland, Oregon. So we are covering the globe today. Thank you all for joining us today. Look, I'd like to begin our discussion by directing our attention to an article published recently by Forbes entitled Next Gen Tech Turns Customer Experience into a Competitive Advantage. The article cites research done by IDC that predicts that worldwide spending on digital transformation is expected to hit nearly $4 trillion in the next 3 years. The article discusses how digital transformation is turning customer experiences into a competitive advantage for businesses using tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced data analytics, the Internet of Things, and augmented reality. Look, it's a lot to consider, as I mentioned before, but companies can better understand customer needs and predict behaviors and deliver more tailored and efficient services through these approaches. And the article warns that the integration of these tools is crucial for staying competitive in today's market. I'd like to ask the panel today, what are your thoughts on the article? And do you feel it really represents accurately the world today? Peggy, what are your thoughts on the article?
My initial thought was yes, finally, recognizing that what we actually do sell is very much the customer experience. I've heard that a lot more and seen that a lot more recently, which I think is very encouraging because the product is the experience. And now we talk about experience architects. And so to recognize that the customer experience is what you're selling, the customer experience is what people are coming back for. And there was research not long ago that even showed people, even in this economy, if the experience is very good, they will look less at the cost. In other words, don't worry about the discount. Think about what sparks joy. So I say yes, the customer experience matters now more than ever. So yes, invest more than ever in it because it is the source of competitive edge.
Well, I agree with you, Peggy. Indeed, research tells us that customers are willing to pay more than
Yes.
competitive organizations if the experience is a good one. Jamie,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on the article and the fact that investment in digital transformation is expected to hit $4 trillion by 2027? Do you feel the article
You know,
represents our world accurately today?
I do, and I think that's clearly evident. I woke up this morning to, for example, I woke up to news that NVIDIA reached another milestone or hit another, peak in its investment or in its values. And so, I
Hmm.
think that tells a story. And you see more and more companies every day. I see a new digital or AI tool that's coming to market, and I think that the number of players, the types of um, you know, technology that's being implemented in all of these companies. And to Peggy's point, and to the article's point, a lot of it does have to do with the customer experience. All of these new tools, well, here we're going to make your experience easier. We're going to simplify our use so that you continue to come back. And those numbers, the interesting piece of that is, I think it's going to open up new channels of communication, new channels, excuse me, new ways of doing business. And again, back to that, we look at lifetime value, incremental increases, temporary lifts in customer numbers are great, but you want to have that sustained lifetime value, that incrementality. And that's what that's what gives you a competitive advantage with most customers is that customer experience. A good customer experience is going to get people coming back more, and you'll see more people referring other people. So it's that, that whole thing is kind of a chain reaction. If I have a good experience, I'm going to refer it to a friend or multiple friends, and then they're going to try it if they have a good experience, and so on. So I do think that it all plays together. So back to your original question, Kevin. Yeah, I can see those valuations, and that may even be a little bit short.
Oh, really? How so?
I
Just
think
in
you're
terms of,
going to I think you're going to see more investment, but what I'm also seeing is in a lot of these tools, because one thing working in marketing, we're always looking for the next thing. For a while, it was programmatic, over the top advertising. Then it's gaming, then it's in-game experience. Now you're going to see these tools. I've been served in some of the AI tools we play with, and now I'm starting to get little text lines of advertisements or different things that with links to click on to try a new tool that's associated with this. And all of those things kind of open up new revenue channels for a lot of these companies, in addition to maybe subscriber fees or enterprise integration fees.
and Deanna, what are your thoughts on the article? It's interesting that these elements, artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced data analytics, Internet of Things, augmented reality, these are all very techy very techie types of things, but yet it all boils down arguably to people and the experience of customers. So a very human, a very emotional sort of factor. Deanna, what are your thoughts on the article, and do you feel it represents our world accurately today?
I definitely think the article is spot on. And I think we've been talking about the integration of technology and AI technologies for a while now, being very fundamental to what the future looks and what customer experience looks. And I think the article mentioned that I can't recall the exact percentage, but what percentage of people actually do consider being loyal to a company because it's personalized, because it knows them, and because it delivers this superior experience. And I think, especially for the people born with the internet, they have an expectation that when they're interacting with the brand knows them, understands them, and kind of serves an experience that is tailored to them. And I do feel that we're living in a world where the internet is going to become a very personalized experience for every single human in a weird way. Probably we're still going to be cohorts and some form of personalization funnel somewhere, but ultimately we're all going to start experiencing it. We already are starting to experience it differently, but like on a much bigger scale. But I also think that one of the interesting bits that I think Peggy mentioned about the customer experience architects, that's going to be a very, very interesting and fundamental point of the future, because a lot of the things that we see in articles and actually that are taken to this next level of discussion to implement operationally for them to work flawlessly. So I think maybe this is where we're still a little bit in that exploratory phase as to how we deploy all of that to humans.
Well, that's exactly what I want to explore today in our discussion, that exploratory phase and what we should be considering in our strategies. But before we get into it, I do want to say that the article is from Forbes called Next Gen Tech Turns Customer Experience into a Competitive Advantage. You can see the link here in the attendee chat if you'd like to check that article out. If you're with us today, what are your thoughts on the article? Let us know what you think about the article. Is it on point, or what are your impressions, how it portrays the world today, and what processes do you feel are most important to influencing superior customer experience? All right, ladies, let's get into our main discussion points today. And this first one is, I'm very curious which processes will deliver the most significant advantages after digital transformation. And Jamie, I'd like to start with you, if I could. Can you give us some advice on how I can identify the most advantageous processes to target? How do I know which processes will give me the most bang for my buck?
I think it depends. And that's almost always going to be my answer initially. Because you have to understand your organization first, your goals, your objectives, and you have to understand the problems or the pain points that your team is having. In a lot of cases, it's understaffing in certain areas. So in manufacturing, a company may want to look at, for example, more IoT because they need to, solve for reliability issues, equipment processes, those kind of things. We tend to, when we're looking at a lot of these digital tools, we tend to look more at the office jobs, the white collar jobs, for example. How can finance, how can, communications and marketing, how can HR, how can, all of those internal processes that we think at the top that move down. But we also need to look at our manufacturing processes as a part of that, because, as Peggy mentioned earlier, if the experience is good with people or with a company, the sales staff, the customer service, and all throughout that entire process, you're going to see people focus less on the cost. But at the same time, you want to be utilizing these tools to improve your efficiency, cut costs, those types of things. So I think the very first thing you need to do is identify your problems, your pain points. Where does it make the most sense to make the transformation first, and then kind of move out of that. And I think that depends on the industry you're in. Are you a product or service company? And then move from there.
So a process-based approach to digital transformation as opposed to digital transformation then coming before the process part of it. Deanna, you're head of digital at August Collection. In your experience, what are some of the advantages that really matter, and how does that translate to the processes that I should be targeting for digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously from a marketing standpoint, we always look at the pockets of untapped potential in the market, any kind of channels that can deliver better ROI for the investment and so on and so forth. And I think in these areas, there is a lot of hunger for transformation because the digital mix has become so vast at the moment to actually, something that could have been managed relatively straightforward, like maybe 5 years ago. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to do the same thing because there's so many options, variations, segmentations, and just messaging and so on and so forth. So we definitely always look for optimization, but I think to Jamie's point, we first need to be very cautious with outlining what our KPIs are and exactly where do we want to drive that change. Because otherwise it becomes this spray and pray approach where we get a tool here, we get a tool there, we just hope something kind of works. And ultimately what we would deliver as an end result is going to be quite underwhelming because there wasn't a set process to start with that we can focus on, like, okay, this is something that's a pain point for the business. How do we go on the other side, and like how do we utilize technology to help us? And I do think that nowadays, because digital transformation and AI are such buzzwords, sometimes people and businesses do get excited about it without actually kind of taking a step back to identify the right KPI that they're trying to achieve with these tools practically.
Deanna, that's an incredibly important point. In fact, we've covered the fact on this show that estimates are about 70% of digital transformation initiatives fail. And the main reason given for that or found for that is a disconnect between the objectives of the business and the objectives of digital transformation or the technology. And you're really getting at this key need for change agents to really understand the KPIs or key performance indicators that drive the performance of the organization. And I know from my own experience that technologists can sometimes be in isolation from that. They're not necessarily in the same perspective or the same C-suite arena that is really intimately familiar with the KPIs that drive the organization. So there can be this huge disconnect. And I think that's one of the reasons why many digital transformation efforts fail, since it tends to not move the needle in terms of the indicators that really matter. Peggy, you are a content strategist. I'm curious about your perspectives when it comes to digital transformation and AI and the generation or the use of content to improve customer experience. From your perspective, what are some of the most advantageous processes that I should be looking at with respect to content generation and the use of AI and digital transformation to improve that process?
I will get there. I just wanted to mention one thing from
Please.
all of the interviews and work and research I do, because I'm a strategist, but I'm also doing the research that builds that content. And so speaking with an executive at Vonage, and you've had Vonage on your show as well before, Kevin,
Indeed.
it was very interesting that they've done some reports about this, but also looking at the KPIs, and it was like, happy days. They are the same KPIs in many cases, because if we're looking at customer-facing processes and we're looking at a difference there, then we're still looking satisfied. Are my customers? Are they returning? So the actions and activities we're tracking, if the technologies to accomplish them are not. So that was, for me, that was a good everything. We don't need to get rid of everything or transform everything. But as far as content is concerned, it's a very interesting discussion out there, because at one level you want to scale, and you must scale, and you have one-to-one marketing, and content enables that. Content is what continues the conversation, particularly for businesses that you're not interacting with every day. You need a reason to come back. That content is going to be part of it. Now, it's a decision for every company company, including companies I'm working with, how to enable that and stay authentic. Very, very important to stay authentic. In fact, a little bit of research that I'm looking into, and when I have it, I'll be writing about it myself over at Forbes and elsewhere, because it was fascinating. Because we think about AI as scaling and content, and we know that creatives are also essential in advertising and marketing. That's what brings me to, and increasingly, it's what I don't have first party data and I want to attract a certain cohort, I'll do that through the creative. Interestingly enough, one company, well, do I really need to optimize for sort of optimizations, and didn't optimize the creative? Just let it go for 2 months. So we have to think about the role of AI, Gen AI, and technology in content. Is it what makes it scale, or has it created some sort of self-fulfilling business cycle for certain vendors who like to test? Who knows? I'll leave it there. I won't go there with you, Kevin, but you have a very interesting topic beyond the scope of this, but a great question and a great decision that companies need to make. Do you scale, and how do you stay authentic?
That is tricky, because the more you scale, the more you become sort of removed from the grandness of the process. But then as you scale, it becomes more and more important to be connected and authentic. And so I think you're right. I think organizations that are successful at walking that fine line will be the ones that will be successful in integrating these tools effectively. All right. Let's move on to understanding how I can evaluate and select the best tools for my organizations, matching tools to the process and finding some quick wins that will deliver a competitive advantage. Let's start with evaluating and selecting the best tools. Look, with all of this technology, with all these approaches available to us, it can be difficult to understand which ones are best for me or for the process. Jamie, can you give us some advice on how I can evaluate and select the best tools for the situation at hand?
Yeah, I think, understanding your needs first and foremost, again, back to that, and the KPI. So you always start with that. And then you want to look at, the individuality of the tools, because a lot of tools, one thing that we see a lot of is you have a lot of great tools that work independently, but they don't integrate with each other, which can create an even bigger mess. So that has to be one of the other things. Is this a tool that plays well with others? Is it, look at what your needs are in terms of, is it an accounting tool? Is it a tool that will scale with you? Is it a tool to that may enable you to be more productive in terms of, can you reach more audiences? Can you better personalize your message? Can you analyze data faster to help you move in a more agile manner? Those are all things that you want to look at. But ultimately, it's how can you utilize these tools in the most efficient way, whether it be, through process in terms of the workflow, or through communication, through HR, through manufacturing, whatever the process may be. You want to look at how these tools are going to integrate with your organization. What technology do you already have? What technology are you seeking? What goals are you trying to align to, or objectives? And then, what is the outcome that you're seeking? Sometimes it helps. Sometimes, we look at it from a zero base where you're building 0 to 100. And then sometimes we start at 100 and work backwards. So, you have to understand, to really, I think, pick the right tools. You really have to understand your operations and what your needs are, and then move from there.
And the right tools may not always be something like AI or something. You may already have the tools on board to give you a quick win in terms of competitive advantage. It just may be rethinking.
Absolutely.
or so are there examples you can give us of when you feel the organizations have been successful in doing that? What did they do, and what were the results?
Yeah, I can actually give you a real world example. And that is we had a client that was they were had a sales staff, like they had a big gap in the number of sales people they needed. So it was really a staffing issue. And they wanted to continue to communicate with people, but not being able to have those one-on-one uh, interactions. They were like, hey, what do you suppose we do? So we started using AI to create some more personalized message to help us with research and things. And then we started to build content programs, email programs, social media that all worked holistically together, but still performed a really personalized experience for each customer. And out of the last 7 major deals, 6 of those all admitted that, yeah, we had at least 10 different digital touch points with your organization, whether it be through a chat bot, which is AI, whether it be through messaging, which is part of the CRM, as well as some AI. So it's all of these different
Mhm.
tools work together, but ultimately it was, throughout multiple departments. And then there was we built them a portal, so they had better understanding of their first party data as well, so we were able to really hone in on those messages. And I think that makes all of the
Nice.
difference. Back to Peggy's point is, we have that was a customer experience. All of that was driven. And we talk about the customer journey in marketing. Those are 2 words that you hear all the time. And we talk about that, but having that personalized customer journey that you are guiding
Mhm.
kind of helps you push that along and shorten your buying cycle a little bit, which leans back to, okay, these tools have made us more efficient and they've shortened the buying cycle. So really it's a win-win.
Now, Deanna, Jamie is describing what sounds like, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it wasn't so quick, but it sounds like a very quick and coordinated win in terms of delivering superior customer experience and competitive advantage. Deanna, where are the quick wins that we should be considering in our strategies?
Yeah, I think I'm always very conscious when we say quick wins because I feel, again, going back to the article, kind of what it mentions how outdated data legacy tech systems, tech stacks practically, a lot of companies are powered by those. So when we look at some of the quick wins and we identify, for example, oh, this process doesn't work, and I'll give a call center example potentially where, looking at quality assurance of calls and so on and so forth. And this is quite heavy manual intervention, usually for people to listen to a number of calls to actually give feedback on how a certain agent is performing. And this is really interesting to automate and get that efficiency and speed, and just kind of you have the call straight away, you get the feedback from the AI QA software. And again, in a sense, this is a quick win because you can implement it, it learns pretty quickly, and it can provide feedback relatively quickly. But to Jamie's point, there needs to be consideration about the actual integration and scalability of the software that any company uses in order to, get a new tool to fix a process or to improve a process. Because what happens afterwards is like, all of a sudden you have this data that sits in a completely separate space, for example, and doesn't integrate with your CRM. So the fact that, you just had all this experience on the call, the customer has provided a certain level of feedback, you have the sentiment from the customer, from the agent, and yet this just sits there now and doesn't append to the customer profile, for example, in your CRM. For me, this isn't necessarily a quick win because you've patched something, but ultimately this isn't helping the overall customer experience, because if this customer calls again and you cannot see that, for example, then ultimately this is just a piece of data that's sitting somewhere that's optimized for that specific moment. Sorry, I'm not sure if I answered your question. I probably went a little bit sideways, but yeah.
Well, and Deanna, you're taking us right where I wanted to go in getting over to Peggy, because you're mentioning CRM, or customer relationship management. And Peggy, before the show, we were talking just a bit, and you were extolling the virtues of a linkage between CRM and digital transformation. And tell us a little bit more about your thoughts there.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this because I've done a playbook recently looking at what is the data handoff in an organization. Where can we actually use the data most effectively? And more, and in many of the companies, I look primarily at app companies, but also all companies, including bricks and mortar, is you're learning how people deal and interact with your app and your digital touch points. And you need to bring that in to improve the product, but also to improve the marketing. And a big part of that is that CRM is sort of separate from that. That's the engagement, the re-engagement. So you're interacting with the product. That's your product analytics, and marketing started that customer relationship in the first place, bringing them together. But the data is over in CRM. So I'm thinking that while it comes in for engagement and re-engagement, I see that as, since we are selling an experience and we're architecting experience, I'd like to see very much that CRM, which is sort of over on the side with some data and sort of dark rooms at the end of the funnel, it's deeper in the funnel, deeper in the basement, who knows. I'd like to see that become more the center of the organization, because I believe that unlocking that information, that data there, will feed into product, allow for optimization there, feed into marketing, allow for optimization there, and then also help CRM understand how it needs to query the data, how it needs to unlock the data. So I'm a bit of a proponent for something odd, which would completely upset the organization, because I see the hub and the brain and the center and the soul as the CRM department. And I'm waiting to see how we unlock that.
I think you might be onto something there. I think you are onto something there, Peggy. It totally makes sense. If we're saying to ourselves, look, the way to really make a difference with digital transformation is through better customer experience and better customer relationships, and we're using data and technology to do that, then it totally makes sense to have our customer relationship management system and data at the center of that strategy. So, Peggy, I think you're spot on with that. And folks, we are here today with Peggy Saltz, content strategist and founder at Mobile Groove, Deanna Petrova, head of digital at the August Collection, and Jamie Grabert, president and co-founder at the Consultancy Group. If you have a question or a comment for our panel today, please jump in and pop your comment or your question into the attendee chat, and we will have an opportunity to bring some of those questions to our panel here in just a few minutes. All right, folks, in the time that we have left, I'd like to bring our attention to our third discussion point today, and that is gaining internal buy-in for your transformation strategy. And look, I mentioned earlier the statistics that find that 70% or more of digital transformation initiatives fail. Often one of the factors contributing to that failure rate is a lack of training and a lack of employee engagement. Those are often cited as a top cause. I'd like to put it out to the group. Why the big disconnect? Deanna, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I think you kind of nail it on the head. Exactly. There is a disconnect because a lot of departments work in isolation. And I think there rarely is really a digital transformation workforce that spans across like operations, marketing, tech, the business itself. And then depending on what kind of company, like operationally on the ground, because to achieve actual digital transformation in any company, you would need buy-in from each and every single department, and actual cohesion on how things need to be done. Because the word transformation itself, it kind of, tips us off that it's not going to be one day we're here, tomorrow we're there. It's an actual process and a journey, meaning things will happen. Things may not work as expected day one or month one. And it's usually a relatively long-term process, right? Like, yes, you might have some quick wins, but to build on top of that and make it successful, it takes time, effort, and actual alignment of the resources and, all departments kind of pulling in the same direction. So, in summary, I just think that organizations need to do a better across the company. Transformation doesn't sit with a specific department or with IT or with marketing or with something new. It's like a company-wide change management initiative, and that kind of needs to drive the agenda for the future, like 1 to 3 to 5 years for that transformation to take place.
And Peggy, what do you feel are the best steps for gaining internal buy-in? What should change agents be doing to engender change within the organization and the people that work there?
Be realistic, number one. Truly, it's that 80-20 rule all over again. Remember, you do 80% just the way you always have, and the 20% is where you go wild and experiment. And that's what happens because there's a mindset change that happens here. And there's a different way of working together. I mean, product and marketing need to work together. Product is marketing. We're just talking about the product. The product is maybe the experience. If that's the case, CRM has to be in there. They have to work together. And I was just thinking of when Deanna was talking about sort of connecting dots and bringing things together. An example at an event where I just was recently, where a retailer is just connecting the dots in the customer journey, and that's transformational. And I thought it was just the coolest example because sometimes simple is elegant. And the whole idea was it's a retailer. So what happens when something isn't on the shelf and they want you to buy? That's the whole idea. So at that moment, there's a QR code. Yes, the good old QR code, linking digital and physical. They don't have your size on the rack. Capture the QR code. It will take you to that place in the website where you can order, and then you can click and collect if you want or pick up. But the whole idea is that, yes, the departments are in silos, and the customer journey is also seen as quite fragmented. So bring the departments together, but also think about the customer journey and some quick fixes there. And it might be something as simple as QR codes and deep linking that start us on that 20% of experimentation, and not a lot of money either.
All right, very good. Now, Jamie, what should I do as a change agent if my employees or teams are not on board with the strategy?
I think if we could crack that code, Kevin, I think that we'd be billionaires, because that's the one question everybody wants to know the answer to, right? Is how do I get all of these things and all these departments on the same page to transform? And to Diana's point, is absolutely going to be a process. But I think part of the process is, tearing down silos, or at least putting cracks in them so they can see through to one another. And that will lend back to Peggy Ann's, focus on customer service as part of the transformation is, if everybody could see into that CRM. And I do work with organizations who are slow, grueling process for everyone. Because, there's this old thing or old way of doing business where if I know everything, then my job is secure. And I think we've all seen maybe that's not the case, and people can be replaced with technology. And that's not what we're advocating today at all. But I do think that, that's part of it, is tearing down those silos, or getting everybody in the room. And a lot of times that just starts with a clear understanding of, here's what we want to do. Here's what we need from you. Here's your piece of this. And here's how this piece fits into this department. And I think when you start to really give some transparency to the transformation, then you start to get more buy-in from more people. People have an understanding of what their role is. It also kind of goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of behavior need, right? Is when I understand, when that safety is there, I have an understanding, okay, my job is safe. They just want to help me do it better. Got it. Okay, now I can really hone in. Okay, now what do you need me to do? And that's clearly communicated. So you work your way up. And when people feel like, hey, I have the support I need, I have the tools I need, or I have the understanding, they're better at their jobs. And they want to be better. So I think that's a really good place to start. And that's where you get the buy-in, is the clear communication. Address their concerns. Here's how we're going to train you and support you in this particular new skill, or in this particular new type of technology, and start building that foundation. I think there's a lot of mistrust in a lot of cultures, because people have seen, well, this department gets this tool and this department gets this tool. Well, what do I get? Or why,
right.
what access am I going to have to that? How are those things going to, so making sure that everyone has a clear understanding, there's a transparent path forward, maybe there's timelines involved, and then how you're going to train and move forward. But I think those really, and again, it's a silo issue, but it's also a company culture issue.
Well, Jamie, you bringing up a topic that Maria Poole is asking a question here. What role do you think organizational culture plays in the successful implementation of a transformation strategy? I'll put it out to the group. What is the influence of organizational culture? And is that something that we can influence to the better? Anyone?
I think Jamie made a great point. I'm just digesting it now that really is so central. Another point that's important is, the culture is very important. And then a commitment to, as I want to put it, democratize data, because data is a part of everyone's job and it's going to support them in doing their job better. So one is the culture and another is the commitment to make certain that people have access to the data. And there are a number of organizations just have to work with that, because that's not a given. And you can't come through a transformational path and then end up at the end handing a spreadsheet off to somebody. So it has to work across the organization, and that's important as well.
To me, organizational culture, it's not, oh, go right ahead, please. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, I just, to build on what Peggy's saying, yes, I think we absolutely need to democratize data. And one of the things that I think part of the issue is, management or leadership doesn't necessarily always want everyone to know the finances. And I think that's one of the reasons that CRM are held so close to the vest, is because they don't want to share that. They don't want people to know, oh, well, and for some organizations, it may be having an understanding, because compensation to employees, maybe a commission rate is different from one person to another. So a lot of times it depends on what level of access that CRM offers the entire organization as far as how the data is disseminated. And again, it goes back to that culture ultimately goes back to trust. Do you have trust in your employees? Do you have trust? Do the employees trust the process? Do you have the right people in the right roles? We frequently see companies that have all-star players in managerial roles, but they're really better at what they do. They're not great people. They're not great at leading and setting that foundation of trust. So then that throws that whole department or, division out of whack, because everyone's always fearful of something. If you remove that, you replace it with a foundation of trust, and you replace it with, okay, I'm here to empower you. Go do your thing. I hired you for a job because you have these skills. Then people will be, oh, hey, here's a new tool. I go to my boss and I need a new tool. I need this to make me more efficient, to make us a better organization. And here's how it can impact the entire organization. Here's how everyone will be able to use it. I would gladly, how much is it going to cost us? And I will go do whatever I need to do to get that for you. So I think having a foundation of trust and building a culture that people really can bring their, back to the point, authentic self back, makes the organization more authentic, makes everybody do a better job. So I really, what organizational or how does organizational culture impact the transformation strategy? I would say that's the number one influencer, is what kind of foundation are you laying for your organization to transform and for the people in it?
Exactly, spot on, Jamie. Thank you for that. Yes. All right, we are here today with Jamie Grabert, Deanna Petrova, and Peggy Saltz. Listen, ladies, in the time that we have left, we've reached the action item round of the program. I'm wondering if each of you could please provide us with one quick action item that we can do to take advantage of the ideas and advice today. Peggy, I'd like to start with you today. What is your action item for us?
Yeah, I have to go with the one I'm so excited about, since speaking with so many people in CRM, unlocking that, and also getting away from a rules-based approach always. Rules make sense, but I've also spoken several times with CRM companies that when you don't send something at 9 a.m. every day, guess what? you'll discover other audiences, other opportunities within your existing customer base. So mixing that up, literally breaking the rules, yes, that's my action item.
Well, thank you, Peggy. That is Peggy Saltz, content strategist and founder at Mobile Groove. Thank you, Peggy, for being with us again today. Deanna, do you have an action item for us today?
Yes. So I've been thinking, and I think one of the most important things for me is to keep the customer at the heart of what you do as an organization, and just to kind of put aside the departments, the silos, and so on and so forth, because we need to put the customer first, whatever company we work for. And if we want true change and truly impactful change in our business, it always starts there. And at the end of the day, all of our businesses cater to a customer, be that B2C or B2B, it doesn't really matter. I think this is truly, the most important aspect of how we do our jobs, is to deliver that customer experience and satisfaction. So they should always be number one in anything we do.
Very good. That is Deanna Petrova. Deanna, thank you so much for being with us again today. And finally, Jamie Graber. Jamie, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, my action item is make your transformation have a purpose, or do it with a purpose. And in doing so, identify your needs first and what problems and inefficiencies you want to solve, and then build from there.
Excellent. Well, Jamie, Deanna, Peggy, thank you so much for being with us again today. What a great panel, and your perspectives and advice, as always, were spot on. Thank you so much. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. And we appreciate you being with us, and join us again next time on July 2nd, when we'll have another great panel of guests discussing the topic of, will the rollout of AI tools leave your organization short of skills? That should be another great discussion, so please be with us then. And in the meantime, if you'd like to find me and connect with me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there, so check me out. I'm Kevin Crane. And you can also check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Digital Transformation Talk. And until next time, I'm Kevin Crane. Thanks for watching.